welcome back to another video. Welcome to another journal video. A couple of weeks ago I did a video all about my reading journal, kind of just walking you through the process of me making a couple book review pages, and I really enjoyed making that video, so I thought we could do something kind of similar today. I have a couple things that I want to do in my reading journal. The main thing that I want to do in this video is set up my reading journal for the new month of June, which I'm really excited about. I love setting my reading journal up for a new month, but I feel like it's a little bit extra fun going into months that are kind of the beginning of a new season. I also have been reading a lot of good books recently, and I want to do at least one book review page as well. And then it's also been a little while since I've just kind of walked you through the process of like how I update my reading journal post finishing a book. I've definitely shared it many times before, but I just love doing it. It's such a relaxing process, and I thought we could do that as well. There are a couple books I've been reading and kind of been waiting to update all at once so that I could share with you the process of that. And then we'll also talk about my TBR for June as well after I set up my reading journal for the new month, which I think is what I'm going to go ahead and start out with, making my June spread. I'm thinking for June I want to do something very summery but a little bit more subtle. I've kind of been feeling like lots of blues and greens recently, so I think we're going to go with a little bit of like a blue-green kind of theme for June. As far as the supplies that I'm using for this setup, I don't really have a concrete plan or like vision in my head of exactly how it's going to turn out, so maybe a little bit of trial and error, but I think I definitely want to use my Monet washi tapes, which I shared with you guys a couple times. I used them when I was setting up my new journal a couple of weeks ago, and I just think they're really pretty. I think they're very summery, obviously just like that kind of river, pond, water lily look to them, but I am pretty excited. I love setting up my monthly spreads, so I guess we'll go ahead and get into it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm excited to just do some reading journal things, and yeah, let's go set up my spreads for June. Alright, so as you guys saw, I did just finish setting up my spreads for June, and I'm honestly pretty happy with how it turned out. It was not quite what I was expecting, definitely a little bit more trial and error than usual, I feel like. A little bit more of like a scrapbook junk journal style, but I think it's fun. I think it's very summery, so let's talk a little bit about my June TBR. So one of my goals for the next couple months, probably just one of my like summer reading goals, is to finish the book series that I'm in the middle in. I don't feel like I'm in the middle of a ton of series, but there are a couple series where I only have one book left and then I will be completely finished, and I just would like to make some progress with that so that I can start some new series, of course. It kind of feels like every time I have a series ongoing that I still have books to catch up in, it's like an extra tab open in my brain, and it's not until I finish the series that I can close the tab and then open a new one for a new series that I want to start. But one of the series that I'm actually really excited to kind of get back into this world and continue is the Shades of Magic series by V.E. Schwab. So the first book that I have on my TBR for the month is A Conjuring of Light. This is the third book in the Shades of Magic series. I really enjoyed the first one. I had mixed feelings about the second one, and so I decided to take a little break from the series, and I feel like because it's been a couple of weeks since I read that one, I've had time to really kind of think on it and miss the series, and I'm honestly just really excited to return to this world. I've also heard really great things about this third one specifically, so I'm really intrigued to see kind of how the story is going to wrap up. I feel like the first book felt almost like its own story. The second book was very much an in-between book, and then I think this one is supposedly very action-packed. I've been on my little V.E. Schwab journey this year. I'm excited to continue reading her books throughout the year. There's a spin-off series that takes place in this world, and I think only one of those books is out yet. That also looks really good too, but I really have missed this world, to be honest. I think it's a decently long book, yeah, like over 600 pages, but hopefully really good. I think it's going to be very action-packed and fun, and I'll definitely have to include it in a reading vlog. And then the other two books that I put on my TBR are books that are also on my summer TBR, so I won't go too much into them. But first we have Tress of the Emerald Sea. This is a book that I'm carrying over from my spring TBR, and I don't know if this is like a super summery book, but it just has sea in the title, so I kind of just associate it with the summertime, I guess. This will be my first Brandon Sanderson book, and I feel like I've heard mixed things about this book. Not that it's a bad book, it's just the humor and the way it's written is not for everybody, so I'm curious to see what I would think of it. I feel like I might enjoy it. I kind of do like some more ridiculous writing sometimes, and I think this could be really fun. But yeah, definitely hoping I can get to this one since I'm trying to finish series and start new series. This will be fun to kind of read, I guess, in between some of those. And then the final book is a book that I actually acquired recently. Actually, I think maybe last week I went book shopping, and I decided to pick this one up because I talked about in, I think, my last vlog how I've really been into historical mysteries, and that's kind of what all I want to read, and just, I don't know, I've been looking for my next one, and so I decided to pick up The Tainted Cup, and I'm really intrigued about this because this is a historical mystery, but it's in the fantasy section technically, so I believe it's like historical fantasy with mystery. It has a lot of great reviews, and I honestly have no idea what it's about. I do believe there is a sequel for this that came out earlier this year, and I don't know if this is a duology or a trilogy, but I am just really excited to kind of combine the historical aspect, the fantasy aspect, and then obviously the mystery aspect. This is the third book on my TBR for June. So those are all the books that I'm hoping to get to this month. I thought I could just quickly talk to you about them. I think next in this video I want to do some journaling for one of my recent reads, which is The Resurrectionist by A. Ray Dunlap. I want to make a reading journal spread for that, and I'll probably do a little voiceover to kind of show you the process of how I'm doing that. So let's go do some more journaling. Moving on to the next part of this video, we have my little book review spread that I made recently. So the book that I am making a spread for today is a book that I've talked quite a bit about recently. I feel like it was my favorite book that I read in May, and that is The Resurrectionist by A. Ray Dunlap. This was a very kind of impulsive, kind of random read for me. Like, I had never heard anything of this book before, never seen it before, until one day I was just kind of browsing my Kindle and I saw this book, and it just sold to me. So I started reading it. I didn't necessarily think that I would have, I don't know, I just didn't have any expectations for it, but I just loved it so much. I loved the whole thing about it. I think this book really showed me that there are certain aspects to stories that I really enjoy. I think the strength of this book is that it was able to include so many different genres and concepts and just do all of them really, really well. And I think that's a little bit tricky to do, especially since this book was not particularly long. I would say it's maybe even on the shortest side. But anyway, to actually tell you what this book is about, this takes place in 1828 in Edinburgh, which is a pretty interesting time and place and setting. At this time, a lot of medical advancements are being made within the anatomy field, a lot of life-changing discoveries. It's basically just a big time for anatomy and medicine advancement, and kind of one of the main centers and capitals of that advancement is in Edinburgh. We follow around our main character James, who has just enrolled in the University of Edinburgh. He is originally from England, from this kind of high society life. He's moved to Edinburgh to pursue his dream of becoming a surgeon and attending anatomy schools. When he gets to Edinburgh, he realizes that there is a bit of a secret life, I guess you could say, a bit of a nightlife, a bit of a hidden layer to the city that is very much connected to anatomy. One of the other really interesting and fascinating things that was going on at this time where there were these resurrectionists, or resurrection men they call them. Basically, there was a body shortage in Edinburgh due to like very strict laws about the bodies that anatomists could study. There was a huge shortage of like live specimens for the students to study, so there becomes a little bit of like a black market, illicit kind of secret groups of people who are essentially grave robbers, but with the intention of stealing bodies for study and for live dissection. And James, this very kind of proper and I guess like sanctimonious character, finds himself kind of dragged into this life, and it really just kind of opens his eyes to, I guess, the more complexity of a city and his field of study. He's a very like righteous and moral character. It's interesting to see how those morals kind of change as he kind of meets all these different characters, kind of learns about different circumstances in life. It's really fascinating. I absolutely loved it. And then the other factor to this story is there is a little bit of a true crime aspect as well. 1828 was the year of the infamous Burke and Hare serial killer case, and there's so many like little details, obviously a fictional reimagining, but when I kind of did a little research and read up on the actual case post finishing this book, there were just so many connections, and that just made it like that much more fascinating, I guess you could say. And it was just all done so well. This writing style reminded me so much of a kind of gothic classic. Immediately, like one of my first impressions when starting the book is that it reminded me so much of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. It definitely has a lot of similarities with that. I would also say that it's very similar to Anatomy and Immortality, that duology by Dana Schwartz. That book also follows around anatomists in this time period in Edinburgh, which is just such an interesting setting that I realize I really love learning about through books like this. I definitely went down a little bit of a Wikipedia rabbit hole after finishing this book, to be honest. I feel like I don't need to give too much of an explanation for what I'm doing with this spread, because honestly it was pretty simple and straightforward. I feel like the main decoration that I added was the lettering, which I knew that I had to recreate the lettering on the cover. So that's basically what I did. It honestly did take me kind of a long time. I sketched it out beforehand and basically just copied the lettering from the cover. I used my Pentel Footy Touch small black brush pen, which I think is the best type of pen to use for this type of lettering, and then I also went over it with my white Uniball Signo gel pen, which I think also just gave it a little bit of dimension. After I finished with the lettering, I went ahead and cut it out and then stuck it onto the paper. And then for the rest of the spread, for the rest of the decorations, I also added some scrapbook paper. I had this like blood red kind of cardstock, which maybe that's like a little bit morbid, but I just thought that it would fit this story so well. I ripped some of that up to add to the corners, and then on top of that, I added some more ripped up paper, just of like this kind of old vintage book looking paper. They're just some prints that I found and printed off. I also added a little gold border, which I actually don't remember where I saw this border. I think I was just looking up like gothic corner drawings on Pinterest and I came across this one. And then as for the rest of the space, I decided to do just a little written review. Did a little bit of journaling, kind of wrote up my thoughts, which was really nice. I was able to kind of basically talk about everything that I talked about at the beginning of this voiceover. And then for my written review, of course, I had to make the handwriting kind of fun as well. I was trying to make it look like, I don't know, kind of like messy, scholarly, a little bit old-fashioned, instead of using my typical gel pen that I use pretty much anytime I'm writing anything down. I again used my black Pentel brush pen to kind of give it a little bit more of like a script look, which I think just also worked so well with the theme of the book. So that is pretty much everything that I did for this spread. I love how it turned out. Now we can move on to the final part of this video, which is me updating my reading journal with my 2 most recent reads. Okay, let's go ahead and update my reading journals. I do have 2 reading journals that I'm using this year. This is my first one that I have carried over from last year and just set up basically all of my beginning of the year spreads in here, but then I did end up finishing this journal I think at the end of February, so this one is just a bit of a continuation from March on. Also, I am filming this on my bed because my desk is all packed up and gone now, so hopefully the angle is not too bad. Okay, we'll start out with this journal since this is where all of my beginning of the year spreads are, and then we'll move on to this one. These are both from Notebook Therapy, by the way, and I will link them down below if you're interested. Okay, so this is the start of my beginning of the year spread, and the first spread that I have to update is just my kind of numbered reading log. Basically, I color in a square every time I finish a book, and then the colors based off of how I read the book. So these last 2 reads, I did read them physically, so I'm going to use this pink zebra mild liner here and just go ahead and color in 34 and 35. Next spread is just my master reading log. It's so fun kind of seeing how this one is filling out so far. I just have the book, the author, genre, the date that I finished it, and my star rating. So I'll go ahead and update this now. I also do like to keep a smaller version of this in my monthly setups, so it is a little bit repetitive, but this is one of my favorite spreads just because I feel like it's the most useful. Based on the color of the genres, you can see that this year I've read pretty much entirely fantasy, a little bit of just like general fiction more recently, and then 1 mystery thriller. So not the most diverse in my genres, I will say, but I feel like recently I have been trying to experiment a little bit more, and in May we read a couple different genres, which is always nice. And then we're on to my favorite spread, which is just my master book log. So a more visual version of the previous spread, just a place where I can see all the books that I've read in, you know, a little cute doodle form. Each color correlates to the month that I read the book. So my color for May is this like peachy shade. So I'm just gonna go ahead and color these in and then write in the title. For Holy Terrors, I'm feeling this one. I feel like that kind of makes sense for Holy Terrors. It's a pretty long book. And then The Night and the Moth, I might do this one here. This one is always fun to see how it fills out throughout the year, and now that we're kind of approaching halfway through the year, I feel like it's looking a little bit full, and I really love the colors so far. This is going to be so fun at the end of the year. And then I'll just go ahead and write in the titles. Next we have my series tracker. I did finish the Little Thieves trilogy, but I have a second series tracker in my next journal since I ran out of room here. So I'll update that one there. But one that I do have to update is my new releases, because both of these books were actually 2025 new releases. So basically I just wrote down at the beginning of the year all these different new releases that I'm excited about, and every time I read one I get to put the little cover, the book cover on, which is always so satisfying. So let's go ahead and see. I have this little envelope here where I keep them all. I think I do have The Night and the Moth here. Yep, so we can update that one. And then let's see if I have the one for Holy Terrors. I do have the little cover for Sea of Unspoken Things, which was the book that I finished before Holy Terrors, and that is also a new release. And I'll probably have to go back and print out one for Holy Terrors because I never ended up printing that one out. I like to print my covers out in batches, so I'll kind of wait to do that. But for now, we can update these two. This is one of my favorite spreads to update. I just feel like it's so satisfying to kind of see it fill out. So we have The Night and the Moth, definitely one of my more anticipated releases of the year, and definitely one of my favorites as well. This was really, really good. Perfect. And then A Sea of Unspoken Things is one that I added afterwards. And then I think I do also have to add Holy Terrors on here. Next we have my book spot page. This one I also have to update a little bit. I have some that I printed out, and I think this is for the most part up to date except for The Night and the Moth, which I believe was the last book I bought. I'm kind of running out of room here, but I did do a Dutch door spread, so I'll kind of just continue going from there. For this spread, I basically just put the little book cover every time I buy a book, and then every time I read it, I will just check it off. So we'll go ahead and stick these ones in. And this spread is only for like TBR book spot. It's not for like if I read a book from the library and then buy the physical copy. Then we have my favorites by month. Oh, this is a good one. I will have to think on this. I'm not sure. I feel like I read a couple really good books in May, so I'll have to think about this one. But yeah, that's a difficult decision. But once I figure that out, I'll fill this one in. Then we have my yearly TBR, which I have not made any progress to. And I think that's pretty much it for this journal. I do have a Hall of Fame page, or it looks like I am missing a couple. I do need to print out Painted Devils, but then I am also going to add The Resurrectionist to my Hall of Fame. This is basically books that I give above a 4-star, 4.5 kind of, just some of my favorite books that I read this year, but I need to print out an extra cover for that one as well. And then I think that's pretty much it for this journal, so we'll go ahead and move on to the next one. Okay, next journal, we're pretty much, I think, starting out with my physical TBR spread. This is one I feel like I haven't updated in a little while. Basically, I just have my books that I brought into the year, and then all the books that I've acquired so far this year, and then these are just like, I add a box every time I acquire a book, color in a box every time I read it, and these are for all the books that I brought into the year that I'm kind of trying to prioritize as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and add my most recent purchases. I'm gonna wait for the ink to dry here before I color these in, but I can check off Holy Terrors and The Night and the Moth, and I'll go ahead and update this as well. Okay, and then I think the next page to update, okay, yeah, now we're on to my series tracker. This is just a bit of a continuation from the first journal since I wasn't able to fit all the series on that one, but I have officially completed the Little Thieves trilogy, which is kind of sad, honestly. I really loved this trilogy. And then The Night and the Moth is actually a part of a duology. It's the first book in this new duology, but I don't think the second one comes out till next year, so I'm not gonna add it to this series tracker since I wouldn't be able to like complete it this year anyway. This is only for series that I can continue / finish within the year. And then I don't think I've started any others recently, but there definitely are some that I'm hoping to start soon. And then We have my April spread, and then I think we're right on to May. Yes, okay, here we are. We can actually finish up this spread now that the month is over. I can check off Holy Terrors from my monthly TBR. Not a very successful month. I only ended up reading 1 out of the 3 books on my May TBR, which I'm honestly not too discouraged with because both of these books I still really want to read soon, but we just only got to 1 in May, which is okay. I'm going to update my book spot page though. I did read Holy Terrors, so I can cross that off, and then I'm gonna add the 2 most recent purchases. I'm gonna go ahead and update my little log here, which is identical to the one at the beginning of the journal, but I just like to have it in multiple places, so we'll go ahead and update that. And then that is it for all of my spreads, I think. So I am gonna go ahead and make a little May wrap up. I think I have the covers for every book that I read in May. So I read 2 Adrienne Young books, The Resurrectionist, Holy Terrors, and The Night and the Moth, which I do have a cover for here. These are my 3 current reads, which I'm currently including in a video, so you'll have to stay tuned for that to see my thoughts on these. But then here are all the books that I read in May. I feel like we definitely have a bit of a blue, purpley color palette. So I think that's what I'm gonna go for this spread. I'm just gonna kind of play around with it and see what I come up with and make my little May wrap-up page. And then that will pretty much be the end of this video because my journal is all set up. My next spread is my June spread, which we set up at the beginning, and I also have my summer TBR, which you guys saw in my last video. But let's go ahead and do my little May wrap-up first.